Bienvenue donc après ce formidable documentaire. On va présent essayer d'en débattre. On a des excellents invités, intervenants, des grands professionnels qui vont venir nous en parler. Juste un petit mot peut-être à propos de ces images. Je crois que le documentaire résume très très bien cette chaîne de production, cette chaîne d'images et comment au fond une image prend un sens, devient iconique. Nous sommes tous devenus les spectateurs de Calamité distante, c'est ce qu'écrivait l'intellectuelle américaine Susan Sontag, et on voit bien que cette image du petit Elan est là pour nous le rappeler, car en fait, au moment où on vit cette crise migratoire, maintenant depuis 3 ans ou 4 ans, une des plus importantes de notre histoire, on se peut se demander si on est capable à la fois de réagir face à ces images, face à ce flot d'images, mais aussi d'agir. Beaucoup d'images nous ont marqués dans l'histoire, des images parfois chocs, des images historiques, des images preuves, on reparlera de ce mot, de la preuve, des images, comme le dit Fiona Shields, qu'on a vu tout à l'heure dans le reportage, Fiona Shields, qui est l'éditrice photo du journal Le Guardian, qui entraîne un point de bascule dans notre univers. Pourquoi ? Parce qu'elles sont souvent insupportables, ou plutôt qu'elles témoignent de l'insupportable. Je voudrais vous citer 5 images que vous connaissez et qui ont marqué, mais il y en a bien d'autres, mais j'ai pris 5 images historiques. Il y a eu ces images des camps de concentration, publiées le 7 mai 1945, c'était dans le magazine Life, qui avait été prise par la photographe Margaret Bourke-White. Et le magazine Time avait dit d'ailleurs à propos de ces images, elles fournissent la preuve du dessin meurtrier des camps. Autre image historique, cette fameuse image du Vietnam, de la guerre du Vietnam, qui a été prise en juin 1972, surnommée la petite fille au napalm, prise par le photographe Nick Hutt et qui avait eu un prix Pulitzer. Est-ce que cette image a changé le cours de la guerre ? En tout cas, est-ce que cette image, comment elle a changé l'opinion dans le monde entier ? Une autre image, quelques années plus tard, en 1985, en Colombie, qui montrait l'agonie d'une petite fille en train de mourir dans une coulée de boue. Cette photo a été prise quelques heures avant sa mort. Cette petite fille est restée 2 jours ou 3 jours dans cette coulée de boue et on n'a pas pu la sauver. Cette photo a fait la une de Paris Match, elle a été prise par le photographe français Franck Fournier. Autre image encore, c'est une image qui a beaucoup fait parler d'elle. C'était une image au Soudan en 1993. On l'a surnommée, cette image, l'image de l'enfant et le vautour, qui témoignait de cette famine au Soudan, qui a été publiée dans le New York Times, qui a eu un prix, qui a été prise par le photographe sud-africain Kevin Carter, qui s'est donné la mort 1 an après cette image, sans qu'il y ait forcément un lien d'ailleurs entre son suicide et le débat. Il y a eu un gros débat à propos de cette image. Autre image, et puis on arrivera très vite au débat, mais une image forte, très forte, c'était cette image du 11 septembre 2001, où on a vu cette image du Falling Man, l'homme qui tombe, qui a été prise par le photographe Richard Roux. Il y a eu un grand débat aux États-Unis et ailleurs pour savoir si cette image était indécente, ou si au fond elle montrait aussi une partie du 11 septembre. Et puis bien sûr, il y a cette photo, cette image qu'on a vue pendant ce documentaire d'Hélène Courdy, 3 ans, retrouvée sur une plage en Turquie. Alors est-ce qu'il fallait la montrer ? Jusqu'où faut-il montrer ces images ? Et c'est cela dont on a parlé avec mes invités. Alors je vais leur proposer de me rejoindre ici sur cette scène. Je demande d'abord à Sharon Slewinski de venir. Sharon est auteure de Human Rights in Camera, qu'elle a publié en 2011. Elle est professeure associée à la Western University au Canada. Vous occupez, si je ne dis pas de bêtises, la chaire Rogers en journalisme et technologie d'information. Venez ici. Bonjour Sharon. Et vous explorez en fait la culture visuelle des droits de l'homme. Et vous avez récemment d'ailleurs participé à un ouvrage qui s'appelle Photography and the Optical Unconscious. Je demande à Michael Neumann de venir. Bonjour, Michael. Michael est directeur d'études au CRASH. Je vais vous expliquer dans un instant ce que c'est que le CRASH. Le CRASH, depuis 2010, le CRASH est abrité par la Fondation Médecins Sans Frontières. Vous-même, vous êtes un historien de formation, mais vous avez très longtemps, vous êtes engagé dès 1999 chez MSF, Médecins Sans Frontières. Vous avez été très nombreuses fois en mission sur le terrain, dans les Balkans, au Caucase, en Afrique de l'Ouest. Et puis, vous êtes aussi partagé avec des missions au siège, notamment à New York et à Paris. Vous avez co-dirigé l'ouvrage Agir à tout prix, négociation humanitaire, l'expérience de MSF, ça c'était en 2011. Et puis, plus récemment, Secourir sans périr, la sécurité humanitaire à l'ère de la gestion des risques. C'était au CNRS, publié par les éditions du CNRS, et c'est en 2016. Alors le CRASH, c'est le centre de réflexion sur l'action des savoirs humanitaires, abrité donc par la fondation de MSF, une originalité, je crois qu'on peut le dire, dans le monde des ONG. J'appelle le troisième invité, Eba Ali. Eba Ali, bonjour. Asseyez-vous. Vous êtes journaliste canado-égyptienne et vous êtes aujourd'hui directrice de ERI News, qui est l'une des premières sources mondiales d'information de journalistes sur le terrain sur les crises humanitaires. Vous avez passé la dernière décennie à courir d'un conflit à l'autre au Moyen-Orient, en Afrique ou en Asie centrale avant de prendre des fonctions de direction. Vous avez travaillé pour la Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, pour le journal de Christian Science Monitor, pour Bloomberg News, et puis bien sûr pour IRIN. Et vos reportages, vous avez fait des reportages dans tous ces lieux de conflit, en Syrie, en Afghanistan, en Irak, au Tchad ou encore en Libye. Je signale que vous avez récemment produit un TEDx Talk qui est intitulé « Stop Eating Junk News », que je vous conseille à tous de regarder, qui est une sorte à la fois de cri, une alerte, un cri d'alarme, et puis un appel à la responsabilité journalistique. Vous nous en parlerez peut-être tout à l'heure. Je voudrais à présent faire venir notre quatrième invité, Moïse Saman, photographe chez Magnum, lauréat de la bourse Guggenheim, ça c'était en 2015. Alors tout à l'heure, je discutais avec Moïse et j'essaie de lui demander, mais alors comment je vous présente? Et c'est un peu compliqué parce que vous êtes à la fois péruvien, mais vous êtes espagnol, en tout cas vous êtes né à Lima, vous avez été élevé à Barcelone, vous êtes un photographe, j'allais dire, de votre temps parce que vous avez suivi tous ces conflits depuis l'Afghanistan, la Syrie, les printemps arabes. Plus récemment, c'était l'année dernière, vous avez suivi de très près, on verra des images tout à l'heure de l'exil des Rohingyas de la Birmanie vers le Bangladesh. Vous êtes au départ diplômé de sociologie de l'Université d'État de Californie. Pendant tous les débuts des années 2000, de 2000 à 2007, vous avez travaillé pour un quotidien américain, le Newsday, et puis vous êtes aujourd'hui collaborateur régulier à la fois du New York Times. Je signale que vous avez fait cette interview dans le journal que je dirige, le Courrier International, une formidable interview faite par la journaliste Delphine Vaudor, et dans lequel il est titré « Une photographie est une preuve ». Alors on va peut-être justement en reparler. Vous n'aimez pas l'étiquette de photographe de guerre, vous préférez celle de photographe documentaire. Je continue ce tour du monde, vous vivez en fait à Tokyo, et vous aimez les reportages longs, que ce soit pour le New Yorker ou pour le New York Times Magazine. Voilà, je signale que vous avez sorti en 2016 un livre sur les printemps arabes qui s'appelle Discordia, qui a été publié en anglais, mais je ne pense pas qu'il ait été traduit encore en français. Il faut lancer un appel aux éditeurs. Merci donc à tous d'être là. Tout à l'heure, à la fin de ce débat, évidemment, vous aurez la parole. On attendra vos questions. Et puis, on donnera, pour conclure, tout à la fin de ce débat, la parole à Caroline Recher, on le disait tout à l'heure, qui est conservatrice au musée de l'Élysée à Lausanne et qui viendra nous donner une réflexion sur le temps long, et notamment le temps long de la photographie, puisque on passe, on l'a vu tout à l'heure, de l'instant, de la viralité à des images parfois qui deviennent, pas toutes, iconiques, et des images qui vont rester dans l'histoire. On aura l'occasion à la fois de parler dans ce débat et puis plus tard. Alors je commence peut-être avec vous, Eva. Je voudrais savoir, ce documentaire, comment vous voyez, je crois qu'il y a une chose qui est très bien expliquée, c'est cet enchaînement. Et on voit bien qu'on part de la viralité, et tout d'un coup, pourquoi cette image devient iconique? Pourquoi finalement l'image qui a eu le prix la même année, 2015, le qu'on a vu tout à l'heure, et qui représente a priori la même chose, qui témoigne de la même détresse humaine, n'a pas le même impact? Qu'est-ce qui fait que cette image-là est devenue iconique selon vous?
Merci beaucoup et j'espère que ça ne vous dérange pas que je parle en anglais, comme ça au moins vous allez me comprendre un peu mieux, ou moi je vais m'exprimer un peu mieux. I think the reason there are a number of reasons why something might go viral, and part of it is the subject of the photo, and that might be the color of the person's skin and the degree to which the readers or audiences can relate to that color of skin, that country, that context. And I think Peter, who's a good friend of mine, made that point very clearly, that when you can see the shoes and you've got that connection somehow as a parent to something that you can empathize with, it does make a huge difference. But I think it's also sometimes a matter of luck. I mean, editors are faced with so many choices on a daily basis, and one day you might have a slow news day and choose a story for a particular reason, and another day where an equally good story is on your plate, but you've got a competing story and you go with that one instead. And so for me, I think my big takeaway is not the photo that this film focused on, but all the other photos that fed the migration narrative in the years leading up to Eileen Curdy's photo. So we at IRAN, we've been following the migration crisis for long before even this latest wave. And a lot of the imagery that we saw before Eileen Curdy's photo were photos of young African men climbing fences, for example. And that was the image that represented the migration crisis, which gives a very different kind of impression, right? One that you should be afraid of these people, that they're a menace, that they're a danger to society. And then suddenly Eileen Curdy's photo comes up, and overnight, as the film says, I remember the Daily Mail in the UK, which is a right-wing paper, had been doing stories about the fact that the migration crisis was making it uncomfortable for British tourists in Greece because there were all these migrants. And that was the front page photo, with these disgruntled tourists. And then suddenly, after Eileen Curdy's photo was published, it was about the tragedy of the migration story. But I think we've gotten to a point in the world where one photo may well shock us temporarily, but in the grand scheme of things, what changes the game is that sustained body of photos. And if that wider consumption is of those other kinds of photos, then Eileen might shift things for some time, but eventually, if you look now, do Syrians have a place to turn to? Are people opening their doors? Are countries sharing the burden? There's so much that isn't happening on the migration front despite this, because the wider narrative has been quite different.
Merci. Je me tourne vers Sharon. Sharon, est-ce que au début du reportage, on voit un présentateur de télé qui dit ces images sont difficiles à voir, it's hard to watch, but it should be seen. Est-ce qu'elles sont difficiles à voir, mais il faut les voir? Vous êtes d'accord avec ça? Il faut montrer toutes ces images?
Well, I find them difficult to watch. I don't know if you, even just watching the documentary, or even the ones that you just showed in the beginning of your presentation, I found difficult. And Peter Bouckaert says, the Human Rights Watch director, says at one point it hit him in the stomach. I think these images are very affecting. And the question that I'm interested in is how they create. The film did a great job of showing the way in which those images spread. You had that great academic from Sheffield talking about, she had that lovely infographic that showed the kind of circulation of this image. And for me, that question of the circulation of the images is very interesting, because it creates the idea of a alignment of witnesses, or a kind of community that, for me, I think is the place where human rights actually get made. Insofar as, if we think about human rights, it's a set of ideas that there's a shared human condition, that we all have the right to a basic dimension of human dignity. And photograph sparks a kind of aesthetic engagement. It creates a kind of spectator that's concerned about world events. It's concerned about what's happening on distant beaches. And so in a kind of sphere of ideas, they're extremely important. In terms of on the ground level of political change, you know, I don't know about you, but at the end of watching this half an hour, 40-minute documentary, I don't know any more about the story of Alan Kurdi, right? We don't know the fact that he left from the beach on Turkey, and his father and his family got into the boat, and then they didn't make it very far, in fact, were washed back. We didn't know that his family was denied the bit. I'm a Canadian, and so there's a bit about Canada in the film, that his aunt had applied for refugee status for the family to come. She wanted to sponsor the family to come, but it's the Turkish government that denied them the exit visas. And it's the Turkish government that's doing the work of not allowing people the refugee status that can make them travel. We didn't learn that from the film, we didn't learn that from the photograph. So there's a question about the level of human rights. It takes a long, long time to think about those kinds of developments of human rights that go back hundreds of years. Think about the abolition of slavery. It took, you know, several decades, if not more than 100 years during the time of advocacy to make that kind of change. And so I think given that we're looking at another migration, mass migration of that scale, it's going to take a long time for that kind of change to occur. But nevertheless, I do think that they're extremely significant for the way in which they create in us a set of feelings, a set of concerns that they create a category that Hannah Arendt would talk about as the world spectator. That the very idea of the human as being a subject that's that deserves a dimension of dignity, that is an idea, and that these images can create that idea by creating this alignment of witnesses.
Merci, on va y revenir tout de suite sur cet aspect-là, mais je voudrais demander à Moïse deux choses. D'abord, est-ce que vous auriez pris cette photo? Et puis, ensuite, comment vous analysez, on le voit bien dans le documentaire, cette chaîne de transmission? Qu'est-ce qui a changé en l'espace de 15 ans? Qu'est-ce qui donne cette viralité? Et est-ce que cette viralité par les réseaux sociaux change l'impact des photos?
It's a complicated question, and actually I want to congratulate the filmmaker because she did an amazing job. I think it's a woman that made the film, dealing with a very complex topic. And I mean, the thing with viral pictures is, you know, I mean, as we've seen in the film, they do provoke, you know, people to react, and they do help sort of the issue, and it helps to sort of raise funds, perhaps, for, you know, to combat whatever is going on. However, I think that it's somewhat inherent sometimes in these types of pictures, the lack of context. And as she mentioned, I think it's super important. And me personally, I see my role as a photographer not so much to, you know, to capture that one image that goes viral. I mean, I see my role as providing context, and I think that there's a value for both. And you know, I think that if I happen to run into that situation, I think instinctively, yes, I would have taken the picture as well. However, like I said, I tend to relate more with longer sort of, you know, stories that are told through many pictures, not just one, because it's a very simplistic approach, in my opinion.
On verra tout à l'heure certaines de vos photos et on va vous les faire commenter. Mais si on s'interroge donc sur l'impact de ces photos, on le voit dans le documentaire, il y a eu une prise de conscience immédiate, il y a eu des déclarations politiques, mais au fond, cette photo, qu'est-ce qu'elle a changé, Michael Neumann?
Bonsoir. Le film, il résume quand même de manière très très efficace la fonction politique des images et le fait qu'on ne peut pas confondre la carte et le territoire. Je pense que la première chose qu'on fait quand on voit une image, c'est de la réfléchir et de voir un peu dans quel contexte elle est prise et quelle peut être son utilisation. Et alors là, on a une image particulièrement, je dirais, paradigmatique, un exemple très fort, mais qui ne doit pas nous faire oublier que cette réflexion que nous offre ce documentaire, eh ben, elle doit être conduite pour l'ensemble des images qui nous sont fournies à la fois par les agences de presse, mais y compris par les organisations humanitaires, par exemple, puisque c'est de cette perspective-là que je vous parle. Alors, pour répondre à la question, le documentaire le dit un peu, elle a ouvert une parenthèse qui s'est refermée très vite. Le discours de Cameron là-dessus est très exemplaire. On a eu dans les discours une ouverture de la politique et de la discussion sur l'accueil des réfugiés qui s'est refermée très vite. Le documentaire dit un petit peu également, mais de manière très allusive, que ça fait des mois que des images de naufrages en Méditerranée et de colonnes de réfugiés traversant les Balkans étaient diffusées dans les médias sans provoquer la moindre once de changement politique, si ce n'est en avril de cette même année 2015, où 2 naufrages ayant causé la mort de 800 personnes a ouvert la voie à, je dirais, la réouverture d'une discussion sur le sauvetage en mer qui s'est là encore refermé de manière très rapide. Alors, peut-être juste un point ou deux, parce que je voudrais peut-être dire un mot sur ce que ne dit pas ce film à la suite de Sharon. D'abord, le fait qu'il semble bien que les images n'appartiennent plus à leur objet, aux personnes. Je pense que c'est une question que j'aimerais discuter à l'occasion de notre
Qu'est-ce que vous voulez dire aux personnes?
C'est qu'on vit dans une époque de droit à l'image où on est censé demander la permission à quiconque pour être pris en photo. Et évidemment, là, cette discussion disparaît. Elle disparaît également dans la manière avec laquelle MSF diffuse abondamment des photos de sauvetage en mer qui finissent par se ressembler toutes. Et donc, c'est une question. Comment on gère aujourd'hui cette question du droit à l'image et de l'appartenance?
C'est une question juridique.
C'est une question juridique. C'est simplement ou bête. Ce serait bêtement une question juridique. C'est une question pour nous aussi, pour les spectateurs, pour ceux qui regardent les images. Là, la discussion est amorcée à travers l'œil du père d'Aylan Kurdi, mais dans le cadre de nos naufragés de Méditerranée, dans le cadre de nos réfugiés dans les camps du nord de la France, qu'est-ce qui reste de la volonté de ces gens d'être mis en scène? Ça, c'est évidemment une question sur laquelle j'ai une opinion, mais je pense qu'il faudrait qu'on y revienne un petit peu. Autre chose, et je vais vraiment m'arrêter là, pour vous dire que les humanitaires utilisent évidemment ce genre d'images, les utilisent dans leur communication, mais ça aussi j'y reviendrai, mais les utilisent comme déclencheurs de leurs interventions. Et donc ça marche d'une certaine manière. Alors on n'a pas, nous, à MSF, décidé d'intervenir sur la crise migratoire en lien avec la photo d'Aylan Kurdi, mais on a bien décidé d'intervenir du fait de la production d'images, du fait qu'on était finalement placé face à un impératif à agir. Il y a un do something. On ne peut pas assister comme ça, visuellement, au défilé de milliers de gens en Europe, à ces images de camps au nord de la France ou au naufrage en Méditerranée sans rien faire.
Quand vous dites on utilise ces images pour agir, vous voulez dire quoi? C'est pour lever des fonds? C'est pour convaincre les politiques qu'il faut agir? C'est dans quel but?
Non, on les utilise pour décider d'une intervention. Je pense qu'en termes finalement de décisions liées à l'allocation des ressources et de l'énergie, ce type d'image a une utilité pour les organisations elles-mêmes. Elles permettent de déclencher une intervention. Une image de tremblement de terre permet d'appuyer sur un bouton qui va, décider de l'allocation de ressources. Ça fait aussi partie du paysage. Et donc, les organisations comme la mienne sont productrices d'images, on y reviendra, mais elles sont aussi utilisatrices, je dirais un petit peu à leur corps défendant, de ce type d'images, parce qu'elles en sont de la même manière que nous tous ici, des récipiendaires.
Merci. Eh bien, peut-être un mot, parce que vous avez aussi un peu travaillé sur... vous avez regardé cette image, quel impact elle a eu. Est-ce qu'on peut calculer, ça se regarde, ça se mesure, l'impact notamment sur les opinions publiques?
On a fait une étude, nous, sur le cas de Aylan Kurdi en particulier, comment la publication de sa photo a affecté the sentiment of media coverage Et c'était en... Bon, là, je mélange les deux langues, ça va vous compliquer la vie au traducteur. Et c'était en Angleterre en particulier, et ça a montré, comme j'ai dit un peu au début, qu'une couverture médiatique était très négative en sentiment envers les migrants et les réfugiés suite à cette photo, devenu très positif. Mais vous demandez, et puis quoi? Qu'est-ce que ça a changé? Et je pense que pour moi, le défi, c'est que ce n'est pas assez de choquer les gens maintenant.
That it's not enough to shock people now.
Le monde a été habitué à être
People are so used
choqué dans les
to
photos.
being shocked by
Alors,
photos
ce qui manque, de mon avis,
that
et
I think what's
Moïse,
missing now,
l'a dit,
and
c'est
Moses
le
said
contexte,
this,
c'est
is
la
a bit of
compréhension,
context, a bit of
et
understanding.
c'est ce qu'on essaie de faire,
And that's
chez
what
moi
we
et
try
c'est-
to do in Iran News.
Il faut, pour
We
vraiment changer les choses, il faut que les
Think
gens
that in order to really
comprennent
change things,
ces,
people need to understand
ces situations assez complexes,
the very complex
qu'ils
situations
ont un
that
contexte qu'ils peuvent développer
exist
l'empathie.
so that they can develop a sort of
C'est pas en
empathy.
français, je pense.
I think it's empathy
Empathie.
in English anyway.
Mais en même temps, on voit bien,
But at the same time,
la contradiction qu'il peut y avoir.
you know that there's a
On voit,
contradiction
l'impact et
because
l'émotion.
you can see the impact,
Je cite une
the
image.
emotion
Et là, vous nous
that
parlez
a picture gives
du
rise to, and then you talk about the
complexité.
context and the way in which that is very complex. And you see that these are difficult to reconcile, these two,
Variés ensemble. Est-ce que,
these two
l'un peut
contradictory.
servir l'autre?
Can one help the other?
Je pense que l'empathie peut être une entrée.
I think that empathy
à
can
une capacité
be
à vouloir
a way
comprendre
in
quelque chose en plus.
and can encourage people to try to
Alors,
understand
si,
things in greater depth.
Moi, je me sens un peu liée à cette question.
I'm
Je vais vouloir
very much tied
m'en
up with
informer un
that
peu plus.
issue.
Alors,
If
c'est
I
politique et telle
feel tied
Mais
up with an
je
issue,
pense
then I
que
want to understand
c'est
it.
pas-
So I think it's an important
c'est
tool.
très différent que le choc.
And that's very different from being
Instead of trying
shocked.
to shock people into waking up, what we're trying to do is to say, here's why this is worth you spending the time to understand it. There's layers of complexity, and as Sharon said, that photo has a whole story behind it that isn't explained by that photo. But if that photo can be an entry point into you wanting to understand the migration crisis more carefully, then I think audiences are more sophisticated today than they used to be, and we need to go beyond just the shock and awe.
Un petit mot.
Can I, yeah, if I can just add, I mean, I think contradictions is a reflection of reality, especially in you know, conflict situations. So, you know, in a way, you have to embrace this contradiction and work with it, you know, and I think this sort of Western sense of everything is sort of either black or white or good or bad, it really doesn't apply in a lot of cases. So I think, at least myself as a photographer, I need to sort of, you know, make sure that I'm conscious of that and that I embrace these sort of walls sometimes, and you know, try to sort of avoid falling in very easy answers. So I think that the contradiction, you know, such is life. You know, it's life is full of contradictions, and you just need to sort of maneuver through them somehow. You know.
Merci. Gardez le micro, Moïse, parce que justement, on va
Thank
arriver
you.
maintenant
Keep the
au
microphone,
moment.
Moises,
On
because
va
now we're going
passer, 10
to
minutes,
spend
avec vous.
10 minutes or
Je vais
so
reprendre
hearing
ce
from
débat
you,
en l'élargissant.
and then we're going
Et c'est
to
vrai
open up
qu'on
the
va
discussion
profiter du fait que vous
to the
soyez
audience. But
avec nous.
since you're
Vous êtes
here,
grand professionnel,
we're going to take
grand
advantage of your
photographe,
presence. You
et
are
on
a famous
besoin
photographer,
que vous nous
professional,
expliquiez.
and we'd like you
Alors,
to explain something to us.
D'abord, vous posez quelques questions, puis on
I
va
have a few
regarder
questions,
des
first of all,
images qu'on a
and then we're going to
choisies
look at some
ensemble. Ce sont
photos that we've
vos
chosen
images,
together,
et
your
vous allez aussi vous les
pictures,
commenter.
that
Tout
you are
d'abord,
going
je voudrais
to comment
savoir,
on.
quand est-ce
Firstly,
que, si
when,
on revient un peu à vos débuts,
if we go back
quand
to
est-ce que
your
vous avez
beginnings as
su,
a photographer,
vous alliez
did you
devenir,
realize that you were going to
photographe reporter?
become a
Est-ce que dès le départ, quand
a
vous
photographer
avez
or a reporter?
commencé dans ce métier, vous êtes fixé
When you
un
started
but?
off
Est-ce que
in
vous
this
aviez un
profession, did you
objectif?
set yourself any objectives?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wanted to sort of, first of all, make something of myself and make my mother proud, you know. But I think, you know, I think, yeah, there's a, you know, I was in my early 20s when I started being a photographer, and I was much naive back then. I'm still sort of naive still to this day, but there was a sense of idealism back then that I think, you know, mixed with a sense of, you know, curiosity and also wanting to know some, you know, more sort of about myself. I decided to take on this career, but I think, you know, over the years, I sort of found myself, even to this day, still sometimes covering conflicts that I was covering 15 years ago. So therefore, it's very clear that you know, sometimes that there's not much that your work can
Vous pensez
change.
à l'Irak, par exemple
Are you thinking of Iraq, for example?
I'm thinking of Iraq. I'm thinking of Afghanistan. I'm thinking of you know, basically the Middle East in general. You know, so in other words, it's you know, it went from a sense of idealism to more sort of realizing what my boundaries are as a photographer and how can I be more effective with my role. And that's why I was saying before. I think my particular role as a photographer, where I think I can be more effective, is by going deeper into stories and to try to be a little bit, you know, to try to understand the context and to try to sort of engage with the viewer by producing pictures that engage and that somehow create more questions than really answers, you know, so it's more of an exchange, really.
Deuxième question.
My second question is a more difficult
Est-ce qu'il y a
one.
des photos que
Are
vous avez
there
prises
any
que
photos
vous
that you have
regrettez d'avoir
taken
prises
that you regret
que vous
having
regrettez
taken
de voir aujourd'hui circuler?
or that you regret seeing today in the media?
No, I mean there's many pictures that I wish I've taken, but I couldn't because of different reasons. But I think you know, and there's pictures that I've taken that have been somehow misinterpreted also, and that's always a bit of a disappointment. But I, you know, I guess I have no regrets up until now.
Est-ce que vous-même vous êtes fixé un jour
Have
une sorte de ligne rouge? Est-ce que vous
You
êtes
set
dit,
yourself any red
il y a des
lines?
critères qui font
Do you have any
dans telle ou
criteria
telle situation
for, in
vous
a particular
n'appuierez pas
situation, not
sur votre appareil
taking
sur
a
le
photo?
déclencheur?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's some obvious boundaries. You know, there's issues of consent. Obviously, I mean, I've been in many places where, you know, I wasn't welcome, or the subject didn't sort of agree for me to photograph them or to grant an interview, and obviously you have to respect that. I think when those boundaries get a little bit tricky is when you sort of think about this power dynamic that I think is inherent in this relationship between us, photographers, journalists, and our subjects, especially in very vulnerable situations. And by this power dynamic, I mean the fact that we, as journalists, have access to an amazing platform to get the story out. But at the same time, we have a huge power of shaping the narrative as photographers and journalists. So this comes with a big responsibility, I think, and I think in my case, I have to keep reminding myself that of this responsibility, and am I living up to it by treating the story that I'm working in or the project with utmost care, with sensitivity, with context, and because I think for me the red line would be to somehow you know, abuse or take advantage of somebody else's suffering just for the sake of a story or to make a splash on the front page of a newspaper.
Justement, je voudrais vous faire réagir à ce que disait tout à l'heure Michael Neumann. Ces images,
What about what Michael Newman said
elles
earlier?
vous appartiennent?
Do
Elles
these
appartiennent
pictures belong to
aux
you,
aux
or do they
personnes que vous
belong
photographiez?
to
À
the
qui
subject?
appartiennent-elles, ces
Who do they
images?
actually belong to?
I mean, there's, you know, legally, copyright-wise, on that dimension, I mean, you know, the work belongs to the photographer. However, when you publish a picture, I mean, I don't know. I don't really think in terms of ownership so much. I think of, you know, if they serve a purpose, if I'm able to somehow engage the viewer. I mean, you know, I like this sort of exchange more than issues of ownership per se, you know.
Vous avez évoqué la sensibilité.
You
Vous avez
referred
pris des
to
milliers de photos.
sensitivity.
Dans les
You've
conflits,
taken
des photos
thousands of
extrêmement
photos in
dures.
conflicts,
On
some
verra
very
peut-être
distressing
tout à l'heure.
photos sometimes, and we'll see
Est-ce
some of
que vous
those perhaps
pensez
in a
que,
moment.
au bout d'un certain temps,
Do you
un
think that
photographe
after a
devient
while,
d'une certaine façon insensible
photographers
à la violence qui peut être montrée
become
dans ces
insensitive to the violence that can be shown in those photos?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a possibility. I mean, especially if you're the kind of photographer that jumps from one conflict to another. I think that by nature, I mean, you know, you can become desensitized. You can sort of lose a little bit of perspective as well because you're a little bit detached from reality. You know. And that's why I think, you know, I even though I started as a newspaper photographer and I started precisely doing that, I was doing very random sort of jumping from one story to the next. But, you know, I sort of realized at one point that I really wasn't growing and it wasn't really something that I was interested in anymore. So that's why then I sort of realized that perhaps my role or how I can be more effective is by working on longer projects where you're able to return to a place and not only see the violence, because that's the other point. I mean, I think in a lot of these places, you think that it's violence 24/7. However, if you return and you're able to spend time and you're able to see the daily sort of regular moments that I think are more sort of relatable as well for the audience, you know, you're able to see that these are sort of normal people in very difficult circumstances and their lives punctuated by violence, but not so much, you know, that's not where it ends, basically, you know.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, attendez, on va faire un autre
Thank you so much.
petit exercice. Vous êtes photographe, donc
We're going to move into a different exercise now. You're a photographer, so we've decided to show some of your photos, and we've chosen some photos together, 6 or 5, and then a short film.
On les regarde et on les
So
commente. Et si vous voulez
let's
intervenir,
watch them, and then perhaps we can hear from you, and if others want to comment as well, they may do so. But could you very briefly just sum up when you took that photo, in what context that was done?
Yeah.
The first, I think, is a film
I think
on the Rohingya.
it's a short clip of recent work on the Rohingya crisis and then a few pictures.
Alors on regarde ça.
So let's have a look.
Donc on voit là des Rohingyas. Donc,
So there we saw Rohingya fleeing Burma, the northwest of Burma, towards Bangladesh.
Très rapidement, vous pouvez nous dire dans
Very
quelles
briefly, could you
conditions
just
vous avez
describe
pris cette
how
vidéo. Donc, je
you
constate que vous faites
took
aussi des
that
vidéos.
film? And I note that, in passing, that you also make films.
Yes, this was actually a collaboration with MSF where we worked an arrangement where they would sort of facilitate access as much as they were able to, and then I was sort of able to do, to find the stories myself and to then place them editorially in magazines. These ended up being published in the New Yorker on their website, along with pictures that I took as well. And as you could see, that I shot this video at the precise moment at the entry point where these refugees had crossed the border over the river from Myanmar into Bangladesh. And getting to that spot was sort of difficult because these crossings sort of happen to some degree secretly, and you don't really know specifically where. So it took a lot of sort of waiting around and asking the local people as well to for information of where they thought the people were crossing that day. But the influx was so sort of huge that this was happening simultaneously along many different places along the border.
Alors, on va continuer avec les deux autres images. Peut-être quand même, Michael.
Let's move on with some more pictures, but perhaps Michael Newman wanted to say something. You said earlier that you helped MSF help to produce some of these pictures. I won't get into the details. We do produce. We are producers of pictures because we have a department responsible for that. But also we regularly support photographers and documentary makers who want to go and film crises. Firstly, because photographers and documentary makers find it more and more difficult to publish in traditional media through the press as well. So we try to facilitate that type of work. And then the second thing I would like to say, and this comes back to Aylan, why were there so many pictures of the migrant crisis in 2015? Well, because it was quite easy to take them. It wasn't far away from Europe. It was quite easy to go to Greece, to Turkey, or Serbia, or Calais to take those photos. But going to Yemen, or going to Bangladesh, filming people fleeing those regions, or in Somalia, or in Mosul, it's more difficult. It's much more difficult. And so that's why we have to try to cooperate in different ways to produce these pictures. We want to reduce this numbing effect of finding more and more pictures that desensitize us. I think one death is a tragedy, but a million deaths are a statistic. I think someone said that. But basically, at the end of the day, we do get desensitized, so we need to try to get back to the individual and focus on the individual. And that means getting close to people, quite literally.
Peut-être leur donner la parole, quoi.
And maybe even allow them to speak, give them a voice, find another way to enable these people to participate in the narration, the storytelling of their own situation. This is like what Jungle Eye has been doing. They gave cameras to refugees in Calais and in Greece so that they themselves could document their situation. And it wouldn't, it would get them away from being victims all of the time, give them the role of actor. And then the issue of the image rights is very different, of course. Okay, moving on. We now have a picture from Libya. This is from last spring, I believe. And there was a lot said about this situation. Would you like to say something about this picture?
This is... it's a picture of another of the thousands of bodies that were washing up in the Mediterranean. This happened to be right on the Libyan coast, so this boat didn't get too far, but there was like dozens of people that washed out on the shore. And this picture, I actually, it's a picture of a folder that I took in an office at the Libyan Red Crescent in Tripoli, where they had these pictures of unidentified bodies. So there was a whole set of, hundreds and hundreds of just pictures like these that they had no information whatsoever, or who this person was, where were they from. anything whatsoever, you know, and unfortunately, without any real means to really do research about, you know, trying to find the family of this person or anything like that. So to me, it was important to show this picture as well. I think there's another one next.
La suivante.
Could we have the next one, please?
Yeah, this is also in Libya, in Tripoli, and this is basically the people that get on those boats. You know, these are young men and women that you know have decided to put their lives at risk to ultimately, you know, get to Europe and, you know, and start again. You know, and so the problem is that, you know, there's a very sort of perverse dynamic going on, and I don't want to get into politics too much, but there's you know, Europe, the policies of Europe towards the migrant crisis are feeding these sort of detention centers in Libya where, you know, they're basically outsourcing the controlling the seas to different militias currently in Libya, and what they do is, you know, they do not allow them to cross into Europe, so they arrest them when they're at sea, and then they put them back in these very rough and unsanitary detention centers without access to bathrooms, without access to showers. A lot of them had to, you know, pee in bottles and you know, sort of, I mean, it was extremely unsanitary. And some of these people had been detained for months, you know, and now what different organizations like IOM and other groups are trying to repatriate these people back to their countries. But this is the current sort of situation in this cycle of, you know, sending people out to sea to get them arrested, to, you know, it's sort of a wheel that is quite perverse in my opinion.
Ces photos, lorsqu'elles elles ont été publiées, ont effectivement
when they were published, these photos, there was a degree of scandal, and I think there was a questioning of these European policies as a result, in particular Italians who had been working in Libya. But this is a European policy of outsourcing of migration management. I thought you wanted to react to this.
When you look at this photo, I mean, I think it's really important to show a range of photos. This photo is very raw, very real, and takes you to the horrible conditions in which they're living. But it also, you know, it looks like a prison. You know, there are some things that subconsciously you might take away from this, which I'm not at all suggesting Moses's intention was, but that, you know, they give off a sense of criminality, of a jungle. You know, there's these certain threads of narratives that become associated with photos. And I think it becomes even more important to then complement these kinds of photos, which are absolutely needed in terms of describing the reality, with photos that humanize these people as individuals. I think Mikael was saying, you know, we did a piece called Humans of Syria, right, based on the Humans of New York concept, which took these Syrian refugees and then gave the CV basically of each of them. One of them was an NBA basketball player, the other one was a surgeon, the other one was an engineer, you know, and allowed us to get to know them as individuals, which obviously Moses does in his work as well, but in a way that can then help complete that wider picture about migration more generally. So there's a really important role, I think, in terms of the media being responsible in how we go about presenting these images, which images in combination with what, and then being, you know, I was struck by the woman in the film of the Dutch newspaper who said, we wouldn't show the photos of the decomposing migrants off the coast of Libya because people don't want to see that, right? As though, you know, for what I took away from that is she needs to sell newspapers, and if it's too shocking, then she's not going to sell her newspapers. If it's not shocking enough, she's not, you know, so there's this game that you have to play to hit the right sweet spot, whereas I think
Donc qu'est-ce qu'elle doit faire?
I think it's
So
the
what
way.
should she do?
Qu'est-ce qu'elle doit faire, l'éditrice?
But
What
it-
should that editor
to frame
do?
it
Vous nous
as-
dites, elle vend ses
Because
journaux. et
she
donc,
wants to sell newspapers.
qu'est-ce
Well,
qu'elle
I mean, I
So
think
what
there's
should
a
she
whole
do?
discussion around media and the financial pressures that media are under that has led to a decline in the quality of journalism that we see today. One answer to that is nonprofit public service journalism, which is what we do and many others are trying to do to fill the gap left by the commercial media who have a different set of interests. But the other solution, I think, is to ask the question that Moises said, which is this in the public interest, rather than, is it going to shock my readers? But is there value in me publishing these photos? We had the same decision to make, and we did publish them because we felt it was an important contribution to the discussion. So I think there's just quite a number of politicizations that happen in different ways in terms of how these images are used and portrayed, and the decision making that goes behind that.
Sharon, j'aimerais bien vous entendre sur ce point, sur la politisation.
Sharon, I'd like to hear your view on this politicization of images issue.
Yeah, there's been so many things that have gone by that I kind of wanted to jump in on, but I wanted to pick up actually on one thing that Moises said, which was about the question of ownership over the image. And I think it's such an interesting word, this question of image. So what are we talking about? Are we talking about the actual photograph, which photographers almost never give up their copyright to? Are we talking about the context of the publication within which they're circulating? Or are we talking about the image of the person? And when we're talking about human rights, we're talking about the idea of the human being. And that if that is in fact an inalienable right to which each of us have, we have to think about images in that way. And so I think the film actually did a great job of trying to pick at, because we saw with Abdullah Kurdi, Alan's father, the way in which the circulation of that image was a harm again and again and again to the memory of his son. So it's like his son is now frozen as that thing, which is so that the photograph and its context in which it's used has a kind of effect on the image that we hold in the mind. Right, and that there's a kind of there is an indignity that happens, I think, in particular uses of images. And
mais attendez, Sharon, qu'est-ce qu'on fait? On ne la publie pas la photo?
So what should be done? Shouldn't you publish those photos? What should actually be done? Of course, we could discuss this issue forever, but what should be done? Should that photo be published or not?
What should be done for whom?
Cette photo, elle existe. Elle est prise par
This photo has been taken. It's there.
Elle
So,
circule d'abord
first of all,
via les réseaux sociaux.
it's shared on social media very quickly.
Qu'est-ce que font ensuite les journaux?
So what should newspapers do?
Well, I think newspapers' role is if we're talking about conventional journalism, it's in the public interest. So the newspaper has to think about the public interest. But John Berger, who was a lovely critic of photography, talked about the ways in which we have to start thinking about our image, not just images, but our image use as though we all belong to the so-called family of humanity. If we're talking about how do we use our own images? How do you guys circulate your own images? You're careful about their circulation. You're careful about putting them into context. You're careful about who sees them. Why can't we use that same ethic in relation to our public images? If it's true that we believe that we all belong to the same human family, if we believe that we don't, and that some people are not, in fact, human, then we can circulate them as though they're things. And I think, of course, too often that happens.
Vous voulez rajouter un petit mot, Michael?
Mikhail, did you want to add something?
Très rapide, je pense que
Very briefly.
de fait, les corps ne s'appartiennent plus.
I think
Plus entièrement.
these bodies no longer fully
Il y a
belong
bien une tension entre
to
l'utilité
their
sociale et
owners.
politique de
There
la
is a
photo
clash between the
et,
social and
le
political
droit,
use of a photo
de fait négociable
and this
de
negotiable
la personne que
right
nous avons en face.
of the person
Donc cette tension, il ne faut pas la cacher, il ne faut pas
in that
prétendre
photo.
qu'elle
So we
se
shouldn't hide that,
résout de manière
and
facile,
we shouldn't say
automatique.
that it's going to be an easy choice to make or that this can be easily resolved. It's not just an issue of copyright.
Mais accepter
But
qu'elle fasse partie de la discussion.
We need
non pas
to
photo par
accept
photo,
that that
mais
is part
dans
of
le
the
cadre d'un
discussion,
débat,
and
finalement, un petit peu général
this is
sur
a more
l'utilisation.
general discussion on the use of these photos. A moment ago you said that you were talking about photos that exist, but there are photos that don't exist because, coming back to Moises, sometimes photographers just don't get access or find it very difficult to access particular areas. So there are black holes around the world where we don't have pictures, where there are situations that simply aren't talked about enough or at least shown in photos. Moises Saman, do you agree with that, that there are these black holes around the world where we can't see what's happening?
there's not many left. I mean, I think even the most sort of secure societies, they do give out their own message. They're very good at controlling the message. So, but even though, I mean, there's still a message being sent out to the rest of us. And I think, again, as, you know, for us as photographers, I think, you know, our role is to sort of, you know, try to return to this place, even though if you're working under very tight sort of parameters and rules and conditions, if you return sort of enough times, I mean, I think you can also develop a way to maybe see through the lines, you know, and also at the same time, you know, I can think of times, for example, where the only possible way to reach a certain province in Afghanistan or Iraq was accompanied by the US Army, for example, you know, embedded with them. And obviously you only see one side of the story when you're working with one group or another. However, if you know, you can also use this access, even though it's a very limited access, to really you know, try to understand, for example, the landscape of a new place, you know, or try to understand a little bit the dynamics of the people that live there, you know. But it takes really coming back. So it's not something that you can do on one trip, because then you really only see what they want you to see. You know what I mean?
On va poursuivre les photos.
Let's move on with the following photo.
Vous nous la commentez.
Could you just say something about this one?
Yeah, this is from my ongoing body of work on Iraq. This is in the Yazidi areas of northern Iraq, and these are women that were waiting to be.
Photo de 2014. Hein, si
2014.
This is a photo from 2014.
Yes, and these women, this area. It was at the top of a mountain, and this area was actually surrounded by ISIS at the time. And the only way to extract these people from there was from the air. So there was these helicopters that were coming and to try to rescue these people. And I was on one of these rescue sort of missions, and I took a picture of these women waiting to be rescued. And again, this is part of a longer sort of body of work on Iraq that I'm involved in.
Photo suivante.
The next photo.
This is also a picture that, you know, to me has more symbolism than the picture itself, in a way, you know. And this is a picture of a victim of Turkish bombing in southeast Turkey, a massacre that happened in 2011 in a town called Roboski, which is a sort of a Kurdish area that's with a lot of Kurdish militia activity with the PKK, and it's an area that's been sort of under war at different levels of intensity for many years. And this is an area of interest of mine. I've been working in southeast Turkey for a while, and this is a picture of one of the victims of this bombing. It was a picture that I took at his cemetery, at the cemetery where he's buried, and the picture over the years and the exposure to the elements has been sort of creating this effect over his face. But it's part of a longer sort of piece that I'm involved in.
Dernière photo qui date d'il y a un an.
And then the last photo, which is from last year.
Okay, this is a picture from Mosul of the evacuation of civilians from one of the neighborhoods that was under bombardment and under occupation from ISIS. And you know, again, this is, you know, one of these pictures that to me are you know, again, this sort of purpose and this, you know, aim of engaging the viewer through my work. I think that these pictures perhaps are more effective than you know, the sort of typical pictures that you're used to seeing on newspapers, which might be more direct, more, you know, focused on one character or two, or a very dramatic scene. This is still a very dramatic scene, but there's a distance as well, and there's the use of landscape as well that I think brings another sort of dimension to the image, and perhaps can you know, is somewhat more maybe interesting for the viewer to engage in. So that's why I chose this picture.
Vous continuez à travailler en Irak?
You continue to work in Iraq. When was the last time you were in Iraq?
I was just there last week. I came to the festival directly from Iraq, so it's a place that I continue to be engaged in.
Qu'est-ce que vous photographiez en Irak?
And what do you take photos of in Iraq?
It's complicated. I mean, it's a very sort of long-term project that spans. I started working in Iraq even before the invasion in 2003. So over the years, I've gathered quite an extensive body of work that I'm trying to put together in a book form. And for me, Iraq is representative of, at least for my generation, one of the most important conflicts, as it was the Vietnam War in the 60s. I think Iraq, for my generation, it's the conflict that to this day still has many repercussions in American policy and obviously in Iraqi politics as well. So it's something that I'm very much engaged. I also there's a personal dimension to this. I married an Iraqi Kurdish woman, so that I met through my visits in Iraq, and so there's that personal dimension as well that I'm trying to document.
J'ai une question qui s'adresse à vous tous.
I have a question for all of you now, and perhaps Moses, you could go first. There is this discussion about the manipulation of photos. It's a discussion which has become increasingly important with what we have seen in Syria and Iraq, the importance of the use of these photos. You yourself said a moment ago that when you go to Iraq, you went with one side. And do you feel like you're being manipulated in any way?
Maybe Iraq, at certain points, during the sort of early moments of the invasion, there was times, like I said before, that it would be impossible to reach certain areas if you were not with one particular side. And the same happens in many different conflicts. You usually, by definition, you're exposed to one side of the story if you're basically granted access through one side of one faction of the fighting. However, I think that if you persevere and if you're able to see through the lines a little bit, then you can slowly sort of chip away at this one side of the story. And to me, again, this issue of context is really everything, because and a lot of times you can a lot of times you travel with these groups and really you don't see anything that's really worth or that adds to the discussion. You're only seeing whatever they want you to see. And to me, it's important to always try to sort of add a new element to the discussion. That's why I prefer long-term projects rather than one picture type of
Sharon, est-ce que vous pensez que sur des
Sharon, do you think that on photos such as this one, which are very distressing, strong photos, is there a risk that they might be manipulated, and is that risk increasing?
Is that risk increasing? Speaking from a visual historian's perspective, no, I don't think. I mean, we hear a lot about fake news. I'm sure Eba will have things to say about that, but. No, I mean, we can go right back to the beginning of photography in 1839, and we can talk about the manipulation of images. So I don't think that the risk is increasing. I think it comes back to the question of context again and again and again, and our fidelity to telling the truth of a story. I think there's probably a greater complexity now that the field of journalism has transformed so rapidly in the last 5 years. So, there's a lot of questions about the sources, how these images are coming to the desks of photo editors and whatnot, and how to verify. I remember there was a long panel, I think maybe it was Doctors Without Borders, it might have been, I can't remember that organization that's thinking about now how to find ways to digitally determine the source of images. And these are becoming increasingly important questions. But, there's always going to be manipulation. It's just a fact.
On va bientôt vous passer la parole.
We're shortly going to open up the floor to the audience, but we've seen these pictures of Aylan on the beach in Turkey, and we all remember what happened in Aleppo a year or so ago. And very recently we've seen pictures of Ghouta, which are very distressing, and Mikkel Neumann. There are more and more of these pictures, and it's almost like a flood of images coming in now. Is it desensitizing people? Is there a risk that we don't react anymore, that politicians don't take any notice?
De fait, elles sont sans conséquence sur l'action politique, mais c'est pas la responsabilité
politicians don't always take notice, but that's not the fault of those who take these pictures and disseminate them. That's more the fault of the politicians or the political situation today.
La situation dans laquelle on est,
in Syria is responsible for a lot of this.
Pour faire de la question des images un élément central du débat politique autour de la Syrie, ce qui semble
putting the question of pictures at the very heart of the political discussion in Syria. In France, that seems to have been the case. There's been a great discussion on whether or not Ghouta pictures should have been shown. Moses spoke about the war in Iraq in 2003, and that's where this all began. There was a tremendous manipulation of pictures during that time. The greatest of the 21st century, if you like. In February 2003, Colin Powell showed these pictures to the Security Council, and all of them were totally false. And so that was back in 2003, and the pictures were being manipulated at that time, so it's not anything new. What has changed?
Are you talking about Colin Powell's speech? Yeah. The images weren't false, it was the narrative about the images, that these were somehow representations of mass destruction.
Mais c'est là aussi où je voulais en venir, c'est-à-dire que
But that's what I was getting at.
Je pense comme chacun ici,
I think like all of us here,
évalue la question du narratif et de l'importance de
we know the importance of storytelling,
qui se joue derrière la
the
photo comme
importance
étant
of how you use photos to tell a story.
La réponse à tout.
But pictures aren't the response or the answer to everything. When we were watching the documentary a moment ago, I was thinking about the discussion that was triggered by that photo of Aylan in France, about the distinction between a migrant and a refugee. That photo of Aylan allowed
une autre de ces utilisations qui n'est pas mentionnée dans le document
à
tout un tas de gens
de
sanctuariser, solidifier la distinction entre les bons et les mauvais migrants, en estimant qu'on avait dans Aylan un personnage qui représentait l'essence même du réfugié à laisser rentrer au détriment
who should be allowed into Europe, to the detriment of all of others, all of the others. And so we spoke about this, and journalists made that distinction.
Le retour sur la trajectoire particulière
and people talked about Aylan in particular, about how they were fleeing Syria, they got to Turkey in a very difficult situation, he was trying to get to Europe in terrible conditions.
En l'occurrence, à l'encontre peut-être du changement politique souhaité ou souhaitable
was contrary to the political change that some people wanted to see.
Merci. Peut-être une question.
Thank you very much.
Qu'est-ce que change? On l'a évoqué tout à l'heure. Ce rôle de ce qu'on appelle les photographes, les journalistes citoyens, qui prennent des photos un peu
citizen reporters who are just going out with their mobile phones and taking photos and sharing them. And they can sometimes have a great impact. What do you think that's changed for you as a professional photographer?
Comment vous regardez, vous, ces photos?
How do you see those photos taken by people with their mobile phones?
Well, I think that there's obviously a role for them to play as well. I mean, you know, when you're at the first one at the scene, it doesn't matter if it's a picture taken with a phone or with a toy camera or with whatever. You know, I mean, if you're there, you're the first witness. You know, you're capturing pictures that have a very particular value. However, again, I think my role is not to seek those types of images, not to try to be everywhere all the time, because that's just impossible. I think where I can bring, where my work has some value and where what my role should be is to, again, to provide context, you know, to make sure that I'm able to go deeper into stories, that I'm able to understand the complexities, the nuance part of the story, and also the sensitivity, I think, that comes also from experience and from the care that you put into your work. So there's definitely a validity for the two approaches, and I don't think that one cancels the other. I think, if anything, has made the work that I do and that many other photographers do more relevant these days, because there is a lack of context in this very fast-paced way that we're consuming news and content and photography.
Merci, Moïse Saman. Merci à tous les quatre pour rester là.
Thank you to all of the panelists. I would now like to give the floor to members of the public who wish to take the floor. Please do state who your question is for when you ask it. There are plenty of microphones going around the room. So I think upstairs you can also raise your hands if you would like to ask a question.
Bonjour. Bonjour, je ne vois pas, mais
Good
on
evening.
vous entend.
I can't see you, but we can hear you. Go ahead. Good evening. I'm a filmmaker myself, and I have worked in camps in Greece. I have a question about the right to publish. I've always been taught that you could film people in the street or photo anybody in the street, but you should get the permission of that person if you wanted to publish the photo or the film. What about the private sphere? There, it would be forbidden to take photos of people in the private sphere and publish them. In Greek camps, you have hotspots. You have different categories of camp. You have hotspots, which are black holes. They're forbidden to the press because they are managed by the Department of the Interior. And then you have camps which are managed by municipal authorities. And there it's a little bit easier. You can negotiate with the municipality. And then there's also a third category of camps that are run by NGOs. And there, pretty much it's up to the director of the camp to give you the right to go in there and film. Within the camps, it's a bit like the Place de Mollard here in Geneva. Some people want to be filmed, people want to have their photos taken, and others don't. And others refuse. But what is the law? What is the law in a refugee camp? Well, none of us is a lawyer, but I can talk about the French context. I know a little bit about that, and we tried to talk about this in Courrier International. There is a law in France about the freedom of the press, stating that the reproduction of images, and I mean those images of Aylan, the reproduction of images about a crime or an offense that undermines the dignity of the victim without the permission of that victim is punishable by law. However, the problem is that this is only for France, and this is very limiting because this doesn't actually take into account the situation of a victim who is dead. And of course, Aylan was dead, and therefore that condition wouldn't apply. Would you like to add anything to that? Not necessarily a legal opinion, but an opinion on this particular issue.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's true that the question is country-specific, the question of privacy laws. And in the United States, what's interesting is in the United States, they're very, very tight, but because of celebrity, because celebrities are very controlled about their circulation of their images, which is why you have these photographers that are getting arrested because they're camping outside of Brad and Angelina's house. And so you can see here how one's social status matters in terms of one's right to privacy, so that people at the top of the food chain, like Brad and Angelina, can have control over their image, whereas people who've been reduced to states of human debris have no privacy. There's no, there's no control left over their own environment or their own image itself. So these are compelling questions, but they overlap. But I think we should start talking about this question of the right to an image. If it's a case that we're thinking of human rights as being about an inalienable right to a fundamental notion of dignity, we have to start talking about the right to an image. And I think it would be at the forefront of sort of human rights advocacy to begin to formalize these questions, both as a human rights practice and as legal practice.
Merci, Sharon.
Thank you, Sharon.
Nous allons poursuivre.
Let's move on. Are there any more questions?
Un micro qui arrive.
At the front there's a microphone on its way.
Boris Engelson,
journaliste
indépendant.
I'm an independent journalist here in Geneva.
Deux questions
I have 2 questions,
courtes.
very short questions.
Un débat rarement mené dans les médias.
There's a debate which rarely takes place in the media about competition between written press and photographers. And
Vu mon âge, mes souvenirs
given my age, I can remember back quite a long way. I don't go into dangerous countries nowadays, but I remember journalists were jealous of photographers because they were the stars, but photographers were only looking for scoops.
C'était des gens qui s'intéressaient relativement peu au contexte.
They didn't really pay any interest to the context. Now, you've invited a photographer who does seem to be interested in the context. You've also invited few from the written press. But have things changed since those days? When I noticed that tendency towards superficiality of photographers. Or is that still a problem today? And then my second question. There was an Australian showing, if there was an Australian showing beaches with no dead migrants on the beach, then that wouldn't be proof that the Australian policy is sound. That wouldn't be any proof to this room, and I think no politician would believe that either, a populist politician at any rate. So, don't you think, and this is a question for anybody, that the war of images is an asymmetrical one? Well, I'll try to come to your first question, and then I'll open the floor to the panelists for a second. I'll give you a very simple example from my paper. From my every couple of weeks we publish a double-page photo, and that's a very difficult decision to make. And our excellent photography department takes that decision, and I take part in those discussions as well, where the journalists and the photographers come together and discuss the issue, and there are discussions. Let me give you an example. A few months ago, during the Kenyan elections, we decided to publish a photo showing the climate of violence in Kenya. And it was a wonderful photo where we saw a politician or an activist with a machete, and it was a very violent, distressing image. The journalist, following the Kenyan situation on our paper, said that this just did not correspond to the reality of 2017. It was probably more suitable during the last presidential elections, even though there were problems with the most recent one. So a real discussion took place, and we decided not to publish that photo. We chose a different one. We didn't just decide to publish it because it was a very shocking image, but we had that discussion because this was a famous photographer. But the photographer didn't just take it by chance, so you have to give credit to the photographer as well. So some photographers might be looking for scoops, but I think a lot of them actually work very hard at understanding the medium and long term, as Mr. Saman was saying.
Comme vous voyez. Donc je pense qu'il y a de la part une grande responsabilité. Cette responsabilité est partagée. Elle est aussi partagée avec cet élément.
Photographers and journalists, and I think the press must sell papers, of course, but I think journalists also have a duty. Photographers are also journalists, and they also have a duty. And I think we can define that as we like, but we all have this common duty to put things in context when we describe things to our readers. That's the first question. Now, on the second question, this is a geopolitical issue. Who wants to reply to that one? Well, I'll leave the geopolitics to one side, but
less and less of a distinction between print and photo the way there used to be, and they're not these two separate camps. Now in digital storytelling, you're telling stories in one medium using everything mulled together and mixed together. So I think that's, I think...
On the beach in Turkey, it was very close to the traditional scoop seeker.
Je laisse.
Quelqu'un voudrait répondre à la deuxième question?
Would anyone like to reply to that second question?
No, I want to respond to the first question.
Je crois qu'on va vous laisser avec votre deuxième question.
I think it's a time for the relationship between text and image to come back in an important way. I mean, think of the great, important photography books that were about a relationship between a writer and a photographer. You know, Let Us Now Praise Famous Men. The collaboration between Abaddon and Baldwin during the civil rights era. These are really important questions, and I don't think context can be made without words. We need words to give context to images. And I mean, maybe you can speak about this. I'm sure that you've worked with writers in order to establish that narrative of the work you've been doing in Iraq. Moisey's book is getting a fantastic reception, partly because of this question of...
Yeah, I mean, I think that, unfortunately, the budgets to work on longer form stories that really are I think, valuable in terms of providing context are just not there. The industry is in a state that everybody knows, they just don't really care so much about this kind of work. And that's why a lot of us are forced to a little bit detach ourselves from this game, and for example, I still take commissions for magazines, but I do most of my context work, let's say, through grants, through funds that I find otherwise, and that's a very important distinction, because that allows me to not have to be on the pack and not have to be sort of competing for pictures that I'm just not good enough at to be, on the spot right at the perfect time, So there are resources like through grants, through cultural commissions, through museums, through personal relationships with collectors that perhaps want to invest in the work that you're doing as a photographer to create new body of work, and these are or through relationships with NGOs. And that's, finding these alternative ways is something that a lot of us are have to do, because otherwise there's no way to do the work that we want to do.
Well, you can have so much collaboration between the mediums.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just add one thing that can maybe bring it back to the room a little bit? There's also, and this is the purpose of the TEDx, Stop Eating Junk News, there's a responsibility on consumers as well in being part of this picture. Part of the reason that newspapers traditionally act the way that they do is because they're feeding the demand that exists. And if we can start to create an appetite for this more complex storytelling that goes beyond the simple photos or the simple narratives, and you as readers and consumers say, we want more, we're sophisticated enough to handle the complex story, give it to us, that then starts to shape also the industry, which might sound quite simplistic and naive, but I think you have a lot more power than you think you do in terms of choosing what you consume and putting your money where your mouth is, and that can make a difference in this as well.
Merci. Je vais maintenant demander à Caroline
I'd like to ask Caroline Rescher to come up on stage now. She is a curator at the Musée de l'Élysée in Lausanne. And we'd like to finish this debate, if we can, with some questions about how long these pictures last for in terms of their meaning. I think in the documentary we saw this, someone saying that at the end of the day these pictures escape our control and the original meaning tends to be forgotten. So how long will they keep the original meaning, or when will they become historical objects? Well, I think or many people have referred to this already. You can't judge a picture just in the immediate situation. You need to think about their long-lasting impact, and sometimes you tend to get
un certain type, peut-être de registre et un certain type de support de
carried away
diffusion.
by the
Et puis après, le
system
temps
which
passe,
tries to
moi, j'aurais envie de
make you
passer-
use an image in a
de
particular
parler
way.
du temps et de l'espace,
But I think
c'est-à-dire,
we should be talking
il y a la
about
question du
time
temps
and
plus
space,
long, et
the
j'aimerais bien
length of
savoir d'ailleurs
time
ce que chacun des
of the
intervenants
meaning of a
pense,
photo.
c'est-à-dire, il y a des
I
images
wonder
qui
what the
sont
panelists think about
produites
this.
pour là
Some
maintenant,
pictures
mais
are
je pense
produced
aussi qu'on peut
for
produire,
a very immediate audience,
des images,
whereas
des
I also
photographies.
think that we can
D'ailleurs, je
take
rejoins
photos,
Sharon Slewinski
and I
sur,
agree with
qu'est-ce
Sharon
qu'on-
on
de
this.
quoi est-ce qu'on parle quand on parle d'images?
What do you
Sur
mean
quel
by
support?
pictures?
Ici, on a vu
It depends on the support.
des
on
images
the
beaucoup plus grands que ce qu'on voit
support.
d'habitude.
We
Ça
saw
change tout
very
dans
large
notre
photos
rapport
here up on the
physique à
screen,
l'image,
much
dans
larger than
l'émotion
we
qu'il
usually see them,
dégage.
and that changes a great deal in terms of the emotion
Et
that
puis,
they
qu'est-ce qui se
give
passe
rise to.
effectivement quand on laisse passer le temps?
And
Il y
what
a beaucoup de
happens
photographes qui répondent à
in
ces
time
questions parce
space? A
que
lot of
j'aimerais
photographers
aussi rappeler peut-être un
are
autre auteur
interested
qui
in
est
this
très
issue.
intéressant dans ce
Another
propos, c'est
author,
Luc Boltanski,
Luke
un sociologue
Boltanski,
qui a
a
parlé de la
sociologist,
disjonction
has talked about
des
the
possibilités d'information et d'action.
gap
Il
between
parle de la souffrance à
information
distance et en
and
fait,
action
justement,
and this
ce
distance
spectacle de la souffrance qui nous
and this
coince quelque part
spectacle
dans le
of
rôle du
suffering,
spectateur.
which makes
Or,
us
il n'y a pas
spectators
juste le
of
système des
suffering.
médias, il y a déjà
So there
plusieurs
isn't just
types
a
de
system
médias,
of media, but
il y
there
a
are
plusieurs
various
systèmes de
types of
diffusion, il y a
media,
des
there are different
photographes qui
types
vont
of
revenir sur leurs images, qui
broadcasting.
vont passer par
And,
la plateforme de diffusion du livre, qui
Sometimes
permet de
photos
travailler
are
en série.
disseminated in
Donc,
books,
c'est pas seulement,
in series,
dans cette attente de l'image unique qui devrait pouvoir tout dire,
without
pouvoir faire
necessarily
agir.
just
On est dans quelque
using
chose de
these
plus
single
nuancé. Ça
photos on the
permet
front
aussi
page,
d'avoir du texte.
and that
Il
gives
y a
rise
par
to more
exemple des
nuanced
photographes très
understanding.
connus comme Steve
There are very
McCurry,
famous photographers like
qui est
Steve
l'auteur
McCurry,
de l'Afghan Girl, vous vous souvenez
who
peut-être
took that
cette
photo of the
petite fille
Afghan
afghane
girl, who I'm
au
sure you
regard
remember,
complètement halluciné. D'ailleurs,
with
le
that
sens, là,
amazing,
il s'est perdu
those
très
amazing
vite, hein.
eyes,
C'est
but the
devenu une
meaning of
image
that photo
iconique
was
d'une
lost
très
very
jolie
quickly.
fille, mais en fait,
It
c'était
was
une
an icon of a
rescapée
very beautiful
dans
girl, but
un camp de
actually
réfugiés.
she was a
Et
refugee.
Steve McCurry
And
revient
Steve
dans un
McCurry,
livre des années après,
in a book
Untold
many
the
years
Stories
later,
Behind the
Untold
Photographs,
the Stories Behind the Photographs,
et il
talked about that,
complète en fait cette image
and
iconique par toute une série de documents,
backed that up with a
d'images
whole
complémentaires. Il va
series of
rechercher cette petite
pictures
fille qui est devenue
where
une
he
femme,
went back to try and look for that
usée
woman
par la
again.
vie.
And she
Donc, il y a
became
déjà
a very different woman who'd been through a very difficult
comment
life
dire, des
when he found her
élargissements du
again.
propos qui se font par les auteurs eux-mêmes.
And so
Il y a
an
des
image can be
tables
explained
comme
by the
celle
authors
d'aujourd'hui où on essaie
themselves.
de
We can also have
contextualiser, et
round
puis
tables or discussions
effectivement,
like we are
il y a
today
des images
to
qui vont
explain
disparaître
pictures.
à un moment donné
And then
des
some
écrans
pictures
radars
might
et revenir plus tard.
disappear and then appear
Dans un
again
musée,
a
on a
bit
des
later,
collections. Alors, on a
either
des-
in a
on a
museum,
des
for
collections, des archives
instance,
de
or elsewhere.
photographes qui étaient des
In the museum, we have
photographes de
archives
presse, de
of
reportages.
press photographers.
On a par exemple Jean Mort qui a énormément
Jean
travaillé
Mock,
dans le
who
contexte du CICR,
worked a great
du
deal
HCR,
for the ICRC.
dont on va
and
remontrer
the
des images
HCR.
différemment, à d'autres formats.
So we
et là,
show
on
pictures in
revient
different
justement aussi à la
formats.
notion d'espace.
There was also the notion
C'est-à-dire
of
que l'espace
space.
du musée, de la galerie, je pense
You
aussi
can
à
show
d'autres
pictures
types
in a
d'espaces
museum or a gallery, but there are also other public spaces
deviennent des lieux
where you
où
can show
la relation
pictures,
entre le
where the
regardeur et
relationship between
l'image peut
the
être
public and the picture
une relation plus
may
privilégiée,
be
où il y a un temps
more
plus long.
focused because
Je
the
vais
audience
donner
might have more
quelques
time
exemples très précis
to
aussi
take
pour
those photos
étayer
in.
mon propos.
If I could just give you some examples of
Par
that.
exemple, on diffuse avec le musée de l'Élysée un
In
petit
the
film
Musée
dans
de
l'espace
l'Élysée, we have a
Babel,
little film in
Café
the
Babel, pardon, que vous aurez peut-être l'occasion
Café
de voir, parce
Babel,
qu'il est diffusé
which you
pendant toute la
might
durée
be
du
able to
festival.
see
On a
because it's being
on a
shown throughout
demandé
the
à une
festival.
artiste
And we asked an artist
de revenir
to,
sur un album qui était un album d'un ancien délégué du CICR,
talk about an album by
qui
Georges
en
Dessener, a former delegate from the
1920-1921 a
ICRC.
documenté en fait les camps
In
de transit
1922,
pour tous les
he
prisonniers
showed
qui
pictures
erraient à
of
travers
transit
l'Europe et la
camps,
Russie après
prisoners
la Première
coming
Guerre mondiale. C'est un album
through
privé, donc
Russia
là
into
aussi,
Europe
on
after the
sort du
First World War.
registre des seules images visibles à un
And they weren't
certain
just
moment donné,
pictures that were
qui
visible
est un
at that
petit choix
time,
d'images, pour revenir à
but they are
un
pictures
choix
which have been
d'images
put
plus
together
large.
again
Et
into
puis l'artiste,
a
qui est
different
une
format.
plasticienne
And the
contemporaine,
artist, who is a
a
contemporary
choisi
artist,
en fait de faire un feuilletage de
has
cet album en
decided to
complétant avec des photographies qu'elle a choisies dans
complete
nos
that
collections.
with
Et donc en travaillant
photos
en
from our
images, en
collection.
fait, à créer des sortes d'espaces de
And
réflexion autour de la
so
notion
this created a space for reflection
de réfugiés, donc de
with regard to the
fragilité,
notions
en
of
prenant
being
ces
a
tentes
migrant,
qu'on
fragility,
retrouve aujourd'hui dans l'iconographie
which we can now
des réfugiés,
compare
en
with
fait,
what we are
comme
seeing
justement un
today
abri précaire. Et
in
en
very
montrant la forteresse
precarious
de Narva, qui
refugee
était ce camp
situations.
de transit, en fait, en
He
contrebalançant justement,
shows this
en contraste
camp
ces deux types
and then
d'images,
contrast
avec des images de
with the
départ, de
images
sentinelles, etc.
of
Ça, c'est
leaving
un
of
exemple.
refugees.
Un autre exemple, c'est par exemple des archives qui ressurgissent alors qu'ils étaient complètement oubliés. Il y a un historien français qui est tombé il y a 10 ans sur une archive par hasard en faisant des recherches dans des archives départementales en France sur un corpus de photographies clairement prises dans un contexte colonial sans savoir lequel. Et il y avait des pendaisons probablement Afrique du Nord, il n'en savait pas plus. Et en fait, il a tout de suite décidé de cheminer conjointement avec des artistes. plasticien
together
avec
with
des écrivains et un
plastic
chorégraphe.
artists,
Et lui, il a
with
fait la recherche qui a permis en
choreographer,
fait de comprendre
and
que ces images étaient dues à
try to understand where
un
these
correspondant
pictures
de
came
guerre
from.
français dans
And
le
it
cadre de la
appeared,
guerre
and it
libyenne.
seems that there was
Je trouve
a
intéressant aussi
French
la question de
war
la Libye.
correspondent
On est un
in
peu à
the context of the
l'origine en fait,
Libyan
de tout
war,
ce chaos
which
actuel
may
en
be at the
Libye,
very
au
origins
moment
of
où
all of the
l'Italie
current chaos in Libya,
pose une option
when
coloniale sur la
Italy
Libye.
tried to
Et donc,
colonize
en
Libya.
1911-1912,
And in
cette guerre
1911,
tripolitaine est
1912,
documentée
there was
par
this
plusieurs
war
journalistes, dont
that
un
had been documented by a number of
correspondant français.
journalists,
Et
including
donc ces
French
images vont ressurgir
photographer.
un
And
siècle
those
après.
pictures came
Donc,
out
il y a une
again a
exposition,
century
là, on est en
later
train
in an
de
exhibition
préparer une publication.
that we're
Et en fait,
now
les mêmes
working on a
questions
publication
reviennent.
for.
C'est, est-ce qu'on a le droit de
And
montrer
then
ces
the same
images
question
comme
comes
ça?
back again.
Qu'est-ce que ça veut
Do
dire
we
de
have the
les
right to
montrer?
show
Avec quel
these
appareil
pictures again?
critique on les
And
accompagne?
to what extent do we need to take
Et
into
donc
account
voilà,
the
finalement, le
context
temps
in order to
passe,
critically
les images
assess those
s'oublient.
pictures?
Celle qui était brûlante d'actualité il y a un peu plus
Something that
d'un
was very
siècle,
topical about 100 years
s'oublie
ago
complètement et
has now been
ressurgit
totally
avec
forgotten.
un autre regard
And we
et
are now
une autre
approaching them from a very different
distance
angle.
et remettre en question
with a
aussi nos
certain
problématiques
distance,
actuelles. Et le troisième
and
exemple
taking
que je
into
voudrais
account
donner,
in terms of our current policies.
c'est dans
The
le cadre d'un
third
workshop, j'avais demandé à des
thing I wanted to say was
plasticiens
that
en
in a
fait,
workshop I
de
asked
réfléchir,
plastic
en fait, de créer un
artists to
projet
work
artistique
on
autour
a
de
artistic
mémoires
project
douloureuses.
about
Et un des groupes
painful
d'étudiants a
memories.
choisi
And a group
ces
of
images
students
que vous avez
worked
vues certainement sur
or
CNN,
chose pictures that you saw on
petit
CNN,
film
probably
de
a small
migrants
film
vendus aux enchères.
on migrants who were being
Et en
put
fait,
up
ils ont
for
créé une
auction.
installation, quelque chose de
And
très simple.
they
Ils ont
created an
projeté ces
installation.
images sur une
They
feuille
showed
dorée,
these pictures on a
réfléchissant, ce qui fait
golden
que le spectateur, tout en
background, so
devinant
that the viewer
les hommes en train d'être vendus
imagined
et
that
les
there were these
chiffres
people
des
being
ventes aux enchères
taken
étaient
and
tellement
put up for
éblouis que ça
auction.
faisait mal aux
But
yeux.
they were so
Donc là, je pense justement, on a un paysage, une
dazzled by the
constellation à travers
background
ces
that
quelques
it
exemples
hurt their
qui
eyes.
montrent que
No, that was an interesting installation. But
on
these
peut
examples
réfléchir à plein de
just show us that we can think about various different ways of
et que
using
c'est que la
pictures.
multiplicité des voix, des lieux et des
And by
temporalités
multiplying
qui
the
permettent, je pense,
number,
de montrer
multiplying
une
the
compréhension et c'est
time
finalement
and
le
space in which we see those
puisque
photos,
derrière toutes
we
ces
can see them
images,
from
il y a
different
des
angles.
réalités qui sont des réalités de souffrance,
But there are very
qui malheureusement se
difficult
répètent.
situations
Et
behind
que
these
peut-être
photos.
une des choses qu'on peut faire, c'est
Regrettably,
essayer
we are seeing more and more of
de
them.
nuancer et de
So what we
construire
can
un propos
do
qui est un
is
propos
try
à
to
plusieurs voix,
create
plusieurs sensibilités, plusieurs
a vision
Merci
from multiple different
beaucoup,
angles.
Caroline Réché, pour
Thank you very
cette,
much,
cette mise en
Caroline,
perspective. On termine
for that
vraiment un
context.
tout petit mot, Moïse Saman, pour terminer.
Moses Saman,
Peut-être
would you just
réagir à cette idée
say
du temps long.
something to react
Moi,
to
si je
this
vous demande
idea of the
comment vous voudriez
time
qu'on regarde
of
vos
meaning of a
photos
photo,
dans un siècle,
how would you like us to look at your photos in 100 years from now?
I mean, there's hopefully there will be a historical value to the work that me and other photographers are doing on the issues that are changing our generation. I mean, that sort of is the least that we can expect is to, 100 years from now, hopefully those pictures will exist in some archive and that people can have access to and preserve history, which is, probably also one of the most important sort of roles of photography and other arts and other, and also as journalism. So, but I think ultimately it's about engaging with you and engaging with the audience, and if it's through an installation, if it's through a group show with different artists, with different disciplines, I mean, whatever it is that creates an engagement, I applaud that, and I think that it's something that we need to aim to, and instead of thinking about very tight definitions of what we're supposed to do, I think it's more about trying to find new definitions and collaborate with many different people that are doing different things to create a more sort of, a product, let's say, that people can engage with in a greater way, I would say.
Merci beaucoup, Moïse Saman.
Thank you very much, Moïse Saman.
Just
to conclude, if I could just remind you of Gilles Dolay, a British photographer who was interviewed by a British newspaper and who expressed all of his doubts. It's something we published in Courrier International. The way in which he doubted himself when he took photos of people who were victims of wars or conflicts. And he tells us a story about how he was in Iraq, seeing a mutilated child, an amputated child, and the child's mother said to him, when a child is injured like that, the world needs to see it. And that's another way of approaching this debate. There is a responsibility to show what is happening. We know that it's going to be difficult and distressing, but the situation, the context is important. And I think there is a need to put things in context when you see a picture. So thank you to all of the panelists, Sharon Slavinsky, Mikhail Newman, Heber Ali, Moses Saman, and thank you as well, Moses Saman, for your participation. Have a good evening.